Well, good evening, and welcome. And want to thank you so much for joining me this evening on Talking Sip Saturday night. And I want to welcome those who are joining me on Instagram, those who are joining me on Facebook, those who are joining me on YouTube, and those who are joining me on the great TikTok, the great TikTok. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining tonight. Slightly under the weather tonight, so I'm just going to have some Jamaica tea. Well, there's no really Jamaica tea actually. It's really tea. you know, it's really tea tonight, and some water tonight. As you know, the weather in the UK it's somewhat all over the place at this time, and I'm sure many people appreciate that. But without further ado, let's just go straight into it. Tonight, as you can see, the topic is you know, new homes for Jamaicans and king, removal of the king, new home for Jamaicans and removal of the king, and uh, and the reason why I coined that topic tonight and want to discuss that issue tonight is because when you see in the news media um, a lot of developments or a lot of undevelopments which are happening, developments on the investigation scale for the prime minister, issues regarding crime. You can't help but at the same time do notice that there are some actually good things which are happening at the same time, and in a way to sort of dissect the whole process, dissecting the whole thing. And and tonight tonight I'm going to have as a guest tonight. I'm going to have Mr. Marlon Morgan. Mr. Marlon Morgan, who is a member of the Jamaica Labour Party and also of the Communications Task Force. He's going to join me tonight, and we're going to sort of look at some of the positive developments. Because while I said you have the undevelopments, you also have the positive developments which are happening there in Jamaica. And if I sort of break it down to a certain extent, let's look at this. The Prime Minister Andrew Holness has been actively implementing this new social housing program, NSHP, to address housing needs for Jamaicans' most vulnerable citizens. And as of September 2024, the government had built over 259 units, benefiting approximately 900 Jamaicans. By December 2024, the number of housing units handed over under the NHSBC had increased to more than 251, with about 61 additional units ready to be handed out under construction. The program aims to provide housing for approximately 6,000 households across Jamaica living in severe poverty. Houses are distributed across all 63 constituencies, with each constituency receiving 5 units per year, totaling out about 315 units annually. Recipients, including families, live in dilapidated structures, fire victims, and those affected by natural disasters. The houses provide ranges from 2 to 3 bedroom units designed to improve designed to improve living conditions at the same time. Now, and while I'm talking about that, I aim to sort of move over also into some other developments which are happening in Jamaica. And the development which is happening in Jamaica, it's about the king, removing the king of Jamaica as the head of state. That is something which has happened of recently. Jamaica has now tabled the bill in Parliament to remove King Charles III as its head of state and transition the country to a republic. I've always said that removing the king as head of state is one step, but what are you going to replace it with? Is it a republic, or is it a ceremonial, or is it going to be an executive? This move marks anyhow a significant step towards Jamaica full independence from its colonial past, and the bill was introduced by the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Marlon Malahoo Fort. If passed, Jamaica will replace the British monarch with ceremonial Jamaican president as head of state. So therefore, it seemed that the push is towards a ceremonial head of state. Many are debating that it shouldn't be so. It should actually be an executive. But the transition is aimed to be completed by 2025. And of course, 2025, as we know, is an election here. The bill the bill is part of a broader constitutional reform package, including changes to electoral process and citizenship criteria. So yeah, so that's what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. But before I go any further, um, I need to just say, tomorrow night, if you're going to join me tomorrow night I'm going to be having Mr. Joe Aldred, Reverend Joe Aldred. And there it is, Reverend Joe Aldred tomorrow night. Flourishing in Babylon, Sunday, December the 15th, 2024, at 8 p.m. Flourishing in Babylon. He wrote this book about flourishing in Babylon. It's about flourishing in the UK. It's about flourishing in the USA. It's about flourishing in these Western countries where, as Jamaicans or people from the diaspora are resided, there's an aspect of slavery. There's an aspect of racism and all these different obstacles in the way for somewhat, what should I say, success or so. So that is something which is going to be happening tomorrow night at 8 p.m. With Reverend Joe Aldred. Do tune in. It's going to be on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and also it's going to be on my podcast series as well, Dialogue That Matters with Silburn. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's just start the show. Well, thank you for joining me this evening. Thank you for those who are joining me on Instagram, those who are joining me on Facebook, and those who are may have a slight cough with me as well. Now, I like to ask you, what are you drinking tonight? For me, I'm just having a tea as well, and then some water. What are you having as well? I'm going to be joined shortly by Mr. Marlon Morgan from the Communication Network Task Force within the Jamaican Labour Party. And I believe that it is very important to have these sort of discussions. It is somewhat moving against the grain, because if you in the media and you understand what is happening in recent days, there's been some investigation in regards to the Prime Minister and some property in Beverly Hills. There's also been the illicit enrichment investigation, which is undertaken. You have also the court cases, which is also being undertaken. But there's a big question which was asked, and I remember just slightly watching it and seeing on the replay that someone did ask the Prime Minister a question through the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Information and the Minister of Education. Forget what her name is. And he said, how can the Prime Minister still run the country and be very effective with all of these things which are happening? And the response was that he is very effectively on the leadership. And sometimes you see these distractions and somewhat, what can I say about that? But she did clear, and did she make a point that he's actually doing it still under this pressure. And being a prime minister, of course, one must be living under some sort of pressure 24/7, and it's a part of the game. And after a while, you are sort of immune to certain things. But she said he's actually doing it. And when I looked at it, and I've been sort of scanning, because when you're sort of overseas, you're able to sort of scan the waters, you can just able to scan things and see how things are to a certain extent, whereby you're not so caught up in the whole day-to-day fanfare of everything. You're not caught up with the whole emotional aspect of everything. And what I keep seeing are persons who are being rehoused, persons who are being rehomed, um, with, with new properties, persons who are not able to afford, are not able to be caught up in the whole they don't have National Housing Trust, but they are somewhat being rehoused and rehomed. And I just want to, get to sort of understand a bit more of that. Like, how has the new social housing program impacted the lives of the recipients? What criteria are used to select beneficiaries for the housing units? Are there any success stories from families who have received homes under the program? How does the NSHP plan to address the remaining 6,000 households in severe poverty? What challenges has the government faced in implementing the NSHP? And also, we have seen of recent days a new properties in a segment of, where is it? It is called the Welcome to Victoria Palms. And it would be great to find out if there's going to be much more of these. Is it concentrated in one area? Yeah, is it concentrated in one area? Is it going to be in other areas as well? That's a big question. Who are the beneficiaries of these? If someone is not working at all, if someone is not able to afford these things, how are they going to be able to pay for these back or so? You know, what do you have to say about that? Um, and let me see if I can flag up a couple of these pictures as well. Yeah, so that's the interesting thing, and all over the news media in the UK, uh, what has been coming through a lot is the whole King of England, Mr. King Charles, is to be replaced by the yeah the bill. What it says, the bill is part of a broader constitution reform package, including changes to electoral process and citizenship criteria. A big part of the whole thing, a big part of the whole picture. It's a big thing. I believe the whole aspect of the reform plays plays a let me see. Let me see. No, you're not in the studio. Let me see something here. Someone says in the studio. Uh, no, you're. Just 1 second. 1 second there. Uh, not. Remember to click on the StreamYard link. StreamYard link, not the YouTube link. Sorry, the gentleman there. Let me see. Let me see something here. Um, sorry, I'm trying to get in Mr. Morgan. Da, 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 da. Let's see. Click. Da, da, da. One, two. Ah, there we are. Okay. Ah, there you are. You're on the right one now. How are you doing?
Greetings, Silburn.
I was wondering where you are a while ago. Where did you go to?
Yeah,
Or so.
I was stuff selected, enter the studio. So my apologies on that. Let me just say good night to your viewers there in
Yes,
the United Kingdom, and for
yes.
us who are back here on the
On
island,
the
Jamaica.
rock.
And
Oh,
on
wow.
the US Eastern Seaboard, we are
Yeah.
at evening time.
Good, good,
So
good.
good evening to those listeners and viewers.
Yes, yes, fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Marlon Morgan is here, member of the JLP Communication Task Force, and at such short notice, through the advent of Rhoda Crawford and Abka Fitzenley, we are able to rope you in. You became the fall guy, you know. But listen, I want to thank you so much for coming in, and I don't know if you heard my opening in regards to in Jamaica at present, depending on how you scan the news or scan what is happening, you can be going down one particular track. I remember interviewing Mr. Terry Long in the UK, I think it was a year ago or so, at the Jamaica Diaspora Conference, and depending on who you listen to, you say that Jamaica is gone to the dogs, you know, um, and therefore one need to I try to somehow give a sort of balance in many respects. But one of the things which I wanted to come to talk about tonight, and it is something which I've been seeing, Marlon. I've been seeing it, but I don't know if it is getting that prominence, but I keep seeing it regular. It's like it's like subconsciously you're seeing it, but you're not registering it, but you're registering and you're not seeing it, and it is these housing. The Prime Minister Andrew Holness has been actively implementing this new social housing program, NSHP, addressing the housing needs for Jamaica's most vulnerable citizens. As of September 24, the government had built over 259 units. I don't know if this is correct now or it's more each day, benefiting approximately 900 Jamaicans. By December 2024, the number of housing units handed over had increased to more than 251, and the program aimed to provide housing for approximately 6,000 households across Jamaica living in severe poverty. Can you break that down for me,
All right, I'm going to come to that
Marlon?
substantive question in a bit, right? But I deem it
Yeah.
important to just establish some context in this conversation, having regard to some of the editorial you gave just now in the lead-in. You referenced a conversation you had with our state minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Minister Terry Long, some time ago. And you spoke essentially to what we are observing increasingly in the public space, and that is the discourse surrounding and concerning Jamaica and some perspectives that emerge where that is concerned. So, what am I alluding to? There are persons who, especially in a context where they are motivated by political considerations and partisanship, they are inclined to frame Jamaica and, of course, harbor views regarding Jamaica that are particularly pessimistic, particularly negative, and it as though in their mind, the positives that are discernible and are manifestly clear where Enterprise Jamaica is concerned are not happening. I think that is unfortunate. I can appreciate the fact that there is divergence of views in public discourse and in terms of people's engagement one with the other. But at the end of the day, one has to place a premium, Silburn, on objective reality and those things that we can look on and interrogate and the things that are empirical. And in this case, for example, I am speaking to and alluding to Jamaica's macroeconomic fundamentals. We have unemployment in the country that is at record lows. Unemployment
Yes.
is in the order of 3.6%. Unemployment among our young people is now at 10% approximately. This is coming from somewhere in the region of 20 odd percent when Andrew Holness' administration would have taken office. General unemployment was just under 14% when we took office in March 2016. So just to be very clear, we will always have keen debate and a keen contest in the political space, but people are entitled to their own opinions, yes. But I am positing and reiterating this evening that people are not entitled to their own facts. And so we have to recognize persons like myself, and I
Yeah.
do, that we are involved and engaged in, Silburn and
Yeah.
listeners, viewers, a battle for the minds of people. Because
Mm,
there are some folks among us who would seek to feed persons a diet of negativity and pessimism.
mm,
And there are others who see the glass more as half full and are pointing to opportunities that are here in Jamaica, opportunities that have escaped this country in the decades past because the alignment of the key macroeconomic variables that we have now, you're seeing it in relation to just the number of boots we have on the ground to help manage our crime situation here in the country. The JCF is almost that establishment. Yes, this has eluded us for many, many years. If you consider inflation targeting that we now have seemingly mastered in Jamaica. Inflation is coming in relatively moderate. We know that cost of living issues are real. And so the central banks, which is an independent central bank at present, the central bank's targeting of inflation is helping to ensure that we have moderation as it relates to the cost of living issues that confront Jamaican households up and down the country. So as I said before, people have their respective views and so on, but let us just come back to the empirical reality and the objective reality. These, I posit, are uncontested and uncontestable because where Jamaica is at present, we have never been here, or we have not been here in over many decades.
One of the things many people sometimes ask, and the question is, what are the key success stories of the present administration? Because I always say sometimes the best thing to do is always highlight the success of one administration than going back and forth trying to deal with all these different
Litigate
issues.
and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and to actually operate because the present administration has been in power for 2010 since 2010. Is it?
Since 2016 March.
My
So
apologies.
we're coming up on the 9-year mark
Yeah,
in the life
yeah.
of the administration.
Yeah. And Marlon, since we started off on this note here, there are issues there at the same time which you agree that
Indeed,
person,
we wouldn't be unmindful of that. Indeed.
yeah, that people definitely have an interest in and to address, especially with all areas of the. And I hear you speak on this very loudly and very clearly, the whole issues of the IC, because one of the things about like the IC commission,
Mhm.
one of the questions I like to even ask you: do you believe that the IC commission is marred, or is it being a creature of parliament, as Mr. Morgan normally says, the other colleague, a creature of
Mhm.
parliament has its role to play at this present time in Jamaica?
My short answer is yes, in terms
Mm,
of being marred, and I will distill it further by saying about 2 decades ago, and
yeah,
certainly 15 years ago, we had a situation in Jamaica where discussion was rife as to the establishment of what was touted then as a single anti
yeah,
corruption entity. People were of the
yes,
view, many commentators, myself included, at the time I was on radio with people like Professor Trevor Monroe. We used to co host a program on News
yeah,
Talk called The Breakfast Club, right? Many
yes,
observers were of the view that though we had an Office of the Contractor General, and notwithstanding its shortcomings at the time, what Jamaica really needed was an anti corruption institution that had prosecutorial powers. So that was one of the kinks, that was one
yeah,
of the existing mischief at the time that we envisaged correcting. I'm starting there in order to go on to say this. When commentators and stakeholders like myself at the time conceived of and advocated for a single anti corruption entity,
yeah,
we would not have thought that what we have at present as the Integrity Commission is what we had dreamt of and what we had envisaged at the time. And I'll
mm,
tell you why.
mm,
What well thinking and right thinking Jamaicans are interested in is a referee that is not just fair, but manifestly appears to be fair. Because you may be a Liverpool fan or you may be a fan of
Chelsea.
Tottenham, well, or Chelsea. You're a central Londoner. Very well. So you are a fan of Chelsea, right? But the truth of the matter is that you want to be able to repose confidence, particularly in a politically charged environment, as we have here in Jamaica and many countries, especially those that have a two-party system primarily. You typically have the intense battle between the two sides. So what we want is a referee that is fair. And what I'm placing on the table, and I would want to draw your viewers' attention to it, is the fact that at present we have had inactions on the part of the Commission and inactions on the part of the Integrity Commission that we feel strains credibility. I give you an example. In February of 2023, yes, the Integrity Commission dispatched a report where the Director of Investigation alluded to or recommended that the Prime Minister had prosecutorial action brought against him for some conflict of interest issues pertaining to his earlier stint as Education Minister. In that context, though, the Director of Corruption Prosecution, who is the competent agent at the IC as it relates to making rulings and making determinations one way or another as to prosecutions, and that person would have indicated that there is no prosecution to be advanced. The IC would have been aware of that, but this, in spite of that, a senior executive at the Integrity Commission retweeted a particular tweet that was very uncomplimentary, where the Prime Minister's interests and reputation would have been concerned, knowing fully well that he possessed information to the contrary. So why would you have retweet that? That would have been injurious to the honorable gentleman. And then some months subsequent to that, we had an incidence of shooting where a member of staff at the Integrity Commission, quite unfortunately, was the victim of an incidence of shooting. And when media personnel attended upon the premises, as it were, or in proximity to the Integrity Commission's offices, a member of the press corps,
I remember that,
to the senior executive at the IC, essentially what has happened. And he turned to the journalist and said, ask the government that. And when the journalist pressed further, which is understandable, by asking, what do you mean by that, sir? The senior executive of the Integrity Commission said to the journalist, ask the government what that means.
I remember that. It's public knowledge. That was Mr. Greg Christie, I believe. I heard it.
Yeah. So that was a clear way of seeking to intimate that in some way, shape, or form, persons connected with the government or at the behest of government had something to do with that most reprehensible incident. When you have an incidence of shooting, there is no round that is fired from a gun, that has a pilot on it. So once there's an incidence of shooting, you could have had loss of life. Thankfully, in that instance, the victim, did not sustain injuries that were life-threatening, as it were. But for those intemperate, reprehensible, and repugnant remarks to have escaped the lips of the senior executive at the IC, it gives you a sense as to what is perhaps operating in the mind of that functionary, and it essentially places the institution, we believe, and we contend, in an invidious spot. You can't have a referee which essentially projects and engages in a way that would strain confidence of some stakeholders. And at this point, Silburn, we believe that the Integrity Commission is a very polarized and a very polarizing outfit. And that is not what people like myself and Trevor Monroe would have envisaged when we were on the Breakfast Club, touting and championing this whole business of a single anti-corruption authority in Jamaica.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining. I'm joined by Mr. Marlon Morgan, member of the Jamaican Labour Party and of the Communication Task Force. And I think it is good that I have him here because sometimes I believe that things are somewhat marred. Information is marred in a sense because it is clouded with lots of, what should I say, noise. And where I say bangarang to a certain extent. Can I just ask you this question then? And I must ask you this question before we move on from the IC. The Integrity Commission, what do you see, or what maybe, I don't know if you, based on the communication network position that you're in, where does the the government or the JLP sees the movements in rectifying the apparent wrong
All
of
right.
the IC?
Well,
I'm
well,
using my words
excellent question.
cautiously.
Excellent question. Legislation in Jamaica, particularly where they touch and concerns institutions that are established by statute. In other words, parliamentarians pass laws, and it is the laws that creates the institutions. From time to time, the legislation will provide for a review period, right? Because
Yeah,
even legislation that do not touch and concern institutions, you often, from time to time, you have a determined review point for the
yeah,
legislation, because when you do something in 2015, for example, 7 years on, or 5 years on, or 10 years on, you may think it is an appropriate juncture to pause, take stock, examine and interrogate how the legislation has been operating, make a
yeah,
determination as to whether it has been particularly fit for purpose, whether the legislation has been, serving the stakeholders in the way it was envisaged when it was conceptualized and when it was being passed by both houses of parliament. So, in relation to the Integrity Commission, Silburn, the Prime Minister said it in Parliament a few weeks ago, that especially having regard to how we have seen the Integrity Commission operate, we're at a good and important juncture for a review of the legislation that would have established the Integrity Commission. Because guess what? There are folks among us who will see that as an attack on the Integrity Commission, but there are folks like myself who will see that as an effort to make the Integrity Commission that much more fit for purpose, that much more professional, such that it commands the respect of the broad cross section of the Jamaican people, and it is held in optimal and utmost esteem, because that is what we want. A referee in whom all of us can not just be well pleased, but in whom we can, have some assurances that yes, this man will be a fair arbiter of the football game.
you know, you mentioned the word referee, and I'm glad for this conversation because I believe conversations like these are needed because, brethren, and I'm saying to you like this, is when you're hearing all these different debates and discussions and TikTok and people talking, you're only hearing one side, but you're not hearing from the horse's mouth, like in this particular situation. Um, do you believe then that the if it wasn't for the statutory declarations not signed off, if it wasn't for these different investigations, would you have said that the IC commission is okay?
No, I would not have said that,
Yeah,
because we had other curious developments. So, like
yeah,
I said, separate and apart from the reports related issues, we
hmm,
had the intemperate remarks from the gentleman in relation to the incidents of
yeah,
shooting of a member of staff at the IC. But separate and apart
yeah,
from that, there are two former ministers of national security who had adverse findings made against them by the Integrity Commission as it relates
yeah,
to their discharge of their ministerial duties as
yeah,
National Security Minister when they served. I'm referencing here the JLP's Bobby Montague and the
yeah,
PNP's Peter Bunting.
yes,
Both gentlemen were vehement in their objection to the findings and the conclusions drawn by that report that touched and concerned them and their stewardship, respectively, as
yeah,
National Security Minister. Yes?
yes,
What we found subsequently is that a particular accommodation was provided to Peter Bunting that was not afforded Bobby Montague. It is a
yes,
matter in respect of which Bobby Montague stood in the parliament, drew the public's attention to it, drew the parliament's attention to it. It is on the record in the Hansard in parliament, and it is an issue that many of us feel strongly about and we take objection to. Because as we know, what you do for the one, it is important to afford the other that opportunity as well. And in fact, the intervention made by Peter Bunting resulted in what is called an addendum to that instant integrity commission report. So in other words, the primary report is situated at the parliament, but based on an objection raised by Peter Bunting, based on submissions made by him, and I would imagine his attorneys, it resulted in a particular addendum to the Integrity Commission report in relation to the matter which found adversely against him, Peter Bunting of the PNP, and the JLP's Bobby Montague. And that is another example as to how we have one set of treatment for the Medes and another treatment for the Persians.
Yes.
One thing applied for the Jews and one other thing applies for the Palestinians. And what we're saying is that we don't want to have, yes, sheep and goat treatment. What we want to have is everybody being treated either as Medes or as Persians. Either as Jews across the board or as Palestinians across the board. And there can be no two ways about it, my friend.
One question before we go on to the other issue regarding the
I want us to come back to the housing. So you can come back. You can go on with that question.
Yeah, and then go back to we're going to go to the housing. But one question I want to touch on is this. Do you believe that there's a need for an arbitrator, an independent voice sometimes to come in and sort of smooth the waters? I always say, where is a political ombudsman to a certain extent? Where is that sort of calming voice when all these things which are happening? Where is that central voice that can come in and calm the waters?
Well, I'm happy you raised that, because the truth is, we're a nation of laws and of institutions, not of men. So institutions are to be faithful to their statutory mandate and not to Andrew Holness, not to Marlon Morgan, or not to the PNP's Mark Golding, for example. The institutions that serve Jamaica are to be faithful to Jamaica. They are to be faithful to their legislation. Yes? So now, from time to time, you will always have people raising objection to the work of whether the Tax Administration Jamaica, TAJ, or people will take umbrage to the work of the Auditor General, or the Integrity Commission. The ultimate arbiter in relation to grievances, my friend, are the courts, the ultimate arbiters. So in the instant case of the so-called illicit enrichment investigation where Andrew Holness is concerned, he feels, as the subject of that investigation where findings were made that would cast him in an uncomplimentary light, he feels that he is so aggrieved that he has availed himself of the remedies that is available to any subject of a report in respect of which findings you take exception. So the courts are well placed to be arbiters and make a determination one way or another as to whether there are merits to the exception raised by the person or whether the case is without merit. In the case of this September IC report concerning matters of illicit enrichment, we have seen the Prime Minister clearing the first hurdle, which is very important in that the court has held that there is a useful and viable prospect of success in terms of judicial review. And so he sought leave of the courts to advance to judicial review. And the courts, I dare say, have since granted him that leave. And that matter will be determined within the context of judicial review. But to come back to the question of a referee, as it were, similar to the political ombudsman, that function right now is reposed in or subsumed within the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, the ECJ, the Electoral Commission of Jamaica. But ultimately, in terms of just a player that can foster some settling of heated moments and intense moments, that's really and fundamentally the courts in Jamaica, to which all citizens of Jamaica have recourse.
Yes. Well, anyway, just a couple of persons just say something here. Rosemary Francis Binder said, we feel that the Integrity Commission is doing its job. Why do we not focus more on why parliamentarians have not taken the oath of conduct?
So I think she's referring to a particular, set of provisions
the seven.
that the
Yeah.
Integrity Commission had circulated and whatnot. Parliamentarians do subscribe to a particular code of conduct. I
Yes.
believe, if not present, the Parliament is working on, which is why the JLP members took umbrage to this, because the Integrity Commission is fully aware, as it were, that at the level of the Parliament, rather, there is work that is ongoing to distill certain standards, certain deliverables in terms of conduct in public office that members will be compelled and obliged to uphold
Yes.
going
Yeah.
forward. And so the
Yeah.
IC, the measures the IC brought has been seen by and has been deemed by the JLP's parliamentarians as superfluous.
Yes, I think Marlon, there are seven codes of conduct. If you know, there are
Yeah, yes. Seven,
dishonest,
essentially seven.
honesty, leadership, and all those sort of things.
Mhm.
It is something that I always take umbrage with all the while to say that the present government have not signed up to it. I've not officially
Mhm.
signed up to it, and I always wonder why. Do you know why they haven't signed
Well,
up
I
to
just used one simple word, it's not a simple word, but
it?
in one word, I distilled it to the view that the code advanced by the IC was
Yeah,
deemed to be redundant because the members are already bound. For example, ministers of government are bound by a particular ministerial conduct, code of conduct, as it were, in addition to all of the other obligations that reside with members of parliament, which the parliament, as I said earlier,
yes,
is seeking to further solidify and
yes,
have members as signatories thereto.
yes.
So the idea is that I may
Yes,
have personal views
yes.
on this business of the IC's code of conduct, because the truth is there are really points that you really don't need any divide or any particular, what's the word I'm looking for now?
Divide and conquer.
You don't need any particular contention in
Yes,
relation, because these are essentially ideals.
yes.
These are things that the Jamaican people would have an interest in their elected
Yeah.
representatives, and indeed other officials
Mm.
serving as a parliamentarian to abide by and to uphold.
I can help you on that point there. And I just saw what you're coming from. What you're saying now is that whenever a parliamentarian becomes a parliamentarian officially, they go and they swear. They swear oath, isn't it? And they say
Yes,
all
yes,
these,
yes.
they
But
say all these,
in taking your
this,
seat in either the House of Representatives
yes,
or in the Senate, you
yes,
take and subscribe a particular
right.
oath.
And then
Yeah.
after when you become a minister, before the governor general again, you swear
Hmm.
again to so what you're trying to say, it's even though it may not be done in the IC, but it's already done already. It's more like a duplication. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Okay.
But separate and apart from that, I'm making
Yeah.
the point that at the
Yes.
level of the Parliament, there's a body of work. I'm not particularly on top of that brief in
Yes.
terms of just where they are in the scheme of things. But for
Yes.
what it's worth, I'm just locating in this discussion the fact that there's a body of work that is underway in relation to um, getting members to
Yeah.
sign up to and uphold a set of deliverables that will be enshrined
Yeah.
in a particular code of conduct that is to come.
You know, Marlon Morgan. There's a
These are
lady.
developments of which the
Yeah.
ICR
Yeah.
is well aware.
There's a lady named Vita just came on a while ago and she said blessings. And I wanted to say, in a sense, a while ago that this is a blessing in disguise because we weren't going to go down this route. But why not? We came on just to talk about two other issues. But I'm glad that you're able to sort of share some context and that openness in regards to the IC and being very open. And I'm grateful for this, sir. Now, the key thing now which I wanted to talk about was these houses, these properties which are given to persons in Jamaica, which
Mhm.
somehow is overlooked. When you see a person who is in a desperate situation, living in some really terrible,
Substandard and
yeah.
subhuman in
And and
some
I
instances.
and I tell you this, I said it the other day when I used to work in Jamaica. I used to work with Claude Clark, and
Mhm.
And who's not just Clark Uncle, I get food products. And I remember when I used to be in the accounts department and I used to go down to T Geddes Grant, face the community in taxi. And I'm from Ocherius, and I always say, why are these zinc fences around? Always,
Mhm.
this is from 1919. Why are these zinc fences around? We need to take this down. I used to talk on Multi Perkins all about on it. And I believe something which the Prime Minister said that the having new homes and taken away from where they were living can elevate their minds. So I want to turn this over to you to sort of explain more about the housing, the 6,000 plan for helping a lot of people in Jamaica, sir.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity. And I will have quite a bit of a run up because there's a lot of context to
Yeah.
establish and a lot to unpack in relation to this particular issue. As you will appreciate, Jamaica really came to form in the context of exploitation. The anthem of the West Indies cricket team starts out by saying, "No noble thought brought us here to these islands." So the ancestors of Silburn Sidiel and Marlon Morgan, who were enslaved persons who were brought to these isles and formed the masses of the Jamaican population, are persons who were brought here under duress, and they were never brought here to be settled in any dignified and meaningful way. They were brought here for exploitative reasons. Subsequent to that, we know that we have indentured servant who came on. Folks from Asia, the Chinese, the Indians, you name it. Yes. So I want us to understand that many persons in Jamaica subsist and live in substandard conditions largely because they have not necessarily acquired the financial means to, you know, take hold of appropriate housing. There are persons who historically and in terms of intergenerational poverty have been on the margins. And so the zinc fences that you speak about in many urban centers across Jamaica, how those people came to settle where they settled was largely on account of just an arbitrary and a ad hoc, you know, holding of, property. We would call it squatting in the Jamaican context. So these informal settlements, a man just go to a place, set up a little thing. He has his board structure in place, and he, fences that around with some sheets of zinc. So that is what I too saw back in the mid-90s as I made my way from Portmore to high school at KC. Whenever you're driving along Marcus Garvey Drive, just across from T. Geddes Grant and just across from where Facey Commodity is situated, you will see
Yes.
those zinc
Yes.
fences. So just to be clear
Yeah.
now, Sidial, there are those
Mm.
historical injustices and historical underpinnings to how some of our people subsist in the conditions in which they subsist and live in. So we have a thing the Prime Minister described the other day. It's not rocket science, of course. It's
Mm.
called shelter poverty and housing poverty. These persons, many of them in some instances, do not have ownership of the land on which that they occupy, the land on which their dwelling is situated, and a lot of the dwelling is essentially not fit for purpose in terms of for
Mm.
human occupancy and so on. So in coming to office in March of 2016, the
Yeah.
Prime Minister would have been mindful of this particular vexing issue and this deficit in the society as it relates to housing stock, because there are some persons who
Mm.
may not be aware of it. But housing is near and dear to PM Wholeness because
Yes.
during the JLP's years in opposition, there was a period of time in which he served as the opposition spokesman on housing. Many people associate Andrew Holness merely with education, and they
Education. Yeah.
associate him with being Prime Minister of Jamaica and opposition leader at one point, and that's fine. But he had a dispensation in which issues of housing were near and dear to him. And in his incumbency as Prime Minister, during his premiership as head of government, you're seeing active and strong leadership and presence in relation to this vexing issue of housing. So, in taking office in March 2016, Shortly thereafter, the administration devised what is called the Hope Social Housing Program, where
Yes.
based on people's, um, identifiable deficits and substandard conditions, they were identified as people who were eligible for support. They did not necessarily, it doesn't have any conditionalities in terms of being
Yeah.
an NHD contributor or
Yeah.
whatnot. The idea is that on the basis of being a Jamaican, having certain challenges, in many instances, these people do not have jobs or any meaningful and sure sources of income, and that notwithstanding, just their sheer dignity as human beings
Yes.
merit them being attended to by government in the way that it happens in the United Kingdom. In the UK, you guys have what is called council
Council,
homes,
council flats. Yeah. Council housing. Yeah.
because the idea is that to bring people who are in hardship and in tough conditions more into from the periphery more to the center in terms of
Yeah.
accommodation and facilitation, because the idea is that when you allow an impoverished household to move out of housing poverty or shelter poverty and have more dignified housing
Mm.
conditions, in this case we're giving them concrete units. In a time past, we know that it was board houses that used to be provided to the impoverished among us. We're
So can
giving
I?
them
Yeah.
structure that
Yeah.
any middle class Jamaican would be pleased inhabiting.
So can I just ask this question then? So what you're saying is that some of these houses which are given over, these persons are not paying for it. It's given over to
That
them.
is absolutely correct.
That's
These are absolute grants. In other
right.
words, there
Okay.
is no we call it requirement as it were in terms of payback and whatnot, because based on the need assessment, these persons would have been assessed to be in such dire circumstances and in
Yes.
such financially tough position that they wouldn't be able to sustain a mortgage, for example, or even a nominal repayment requirement. So just to be clear, so far, just about 300 Hope social houses. These are concrete structure,
Yes.
appropriate inside bathroom facilities, appropriate kitchen facilities, and two-bedroom units. These have been handed over based on selections made by the 63 members of parliament in Jamaica, based on people being needy and deserving, and this program and this kind of accommodation has uplifted and transformed the lives of many, because you're literally bringing dignity to people
Yes.
whose children used to have to skip over sewage water, untreated sewage, when they are seeking to play in the streets and in proximity to where they live. You're bringing
'Cause-
dignity to
yeah.
people who used to cry or be otherwise agitated. Yes, whenever they see the
Yes.
clouds form together and a rainfall, a
Yeah.
shower of rain is about to come,
Yes.
because
Bec-
they know that the zinc is leaking and there are holes in the board dwelling, the board structure
yeah.
that they call home.
Yeah, because I did see a video. I was trying to find it to share, but I couldn't find it a while ago. But it is where the prime minister was with a property, and there were 8 persons actually living in that property in a very dilapidated condition.
Yes, a
And
wooden
next,
structure, yeah.
yeah, and then next to it, they showed the building of the new property right there, and the person's really feeling elevated, especially at Christmas at this time. Can I just ask then, um, to, for the persons to be assessed as
In
to be
need
able to have
and
these
deserving,
properties, um,
yeah.
yeah. Well, what I said, houses are distributed across all 63 constituencies,
Yes,
and each constituency receiving 5 units per year, totaling about
that is correct.
350.
So just to be clear,
Yeah. Yes.
as you know, Jamaica at present is broken up into 63 constituencies. So there are
Yes.
63 elected officials who represent the interests and concerns of the 63 constituencies.
Yes.
In every community and constituency in Jamaica, You have persons who are so below in terms of their financial state, their socioeconomic realities, that
Yes.
they are essential. These people would immediately self-select and self-identify as being in need of the kind of
Yes.
accommodation that this Hope social housing program is targeting. And so the members of parliament would select from amongst their constituents persons whose living conditions are so substandard and are essentially the worst of the worst, which is the description used by the Prime Minister at one of these Hope social housing handover events.
Yes.
When the selection is made, the person will continue to occupy their current, circumstances. But when the construction is complete, there's a transfer that takes place. The unit is handed over, and one of the things you saw, which is one of the videos you are referring to, Silburn, is a more substantial complex where the Prime Minister in his West Central St. Andrew constituency had an instance where there was fire that broke out at a particular residence. And if you
Yes.
can appreciate how some of the dwellings in inner city Jamaica are situated, you may have one yard, as it were, but in that yard there are several dwellings, several structures, and the fire ultimately moves on from one unit to the next. And because these are wooden structures, these are
Yes.
board houses, you know what that means in terms of fire. They are particularly susceptible to incidents of fire. And
Yeah.
essentially, you had an entire, a massive number of persons displaced in a fire at St. Paul's Lane in the Prime Minister's West Central St. Andrew constituency,
Yes.
utilizing the resources of the state, and I would imagine some sponsorship from whatever philanthropic persons who may have you know brought themselves come forward and provided support.
Yeah.
He has since developed what is called the St. Paul's Lane housing development, where some 36 units, I believe 16 were delivered last week in time for the Christmas. But in the weeks and months ahead, some of the other housing units will also be delivered. But there are 36 in all, I am advised. And this is a fantastic and fully configured and a fully articulated housing
Yes.
complex, in that there's a play area for children. You will not have poor people's
Yes.
children in circumstances where they can't play dandy shandy or
Yes.
a game of scrimmage football in the way other Jamaican children are able to play. Yes,
Yes.
these
The-
are, so this is game changing, because deficits that would have subsisted in their prior living conditions, the
yes.
level of indignity in which they would have had to live, they are now getting a considerable upgrade on that. And there are 6,000 such households that have been estimated to be in Jamaica based on the
Yeah.
Statistical Institute's we call it the census, and
Yes.
the
Yes.
government's
Yes.
aspiration is to work systematically, scale up the social housing program, and do
Yes.
600 units next year based on the scale up. So come 25, 26, it is intended for 600 social housing units to be done in that period of time, and that is why the Jamaican people are being encouraged, yes, to
and
stick
and and,
going
and can I
forward.
say, and can I just come in right here to say that the census is very important for persons to really make themselves avail for those, in order to understand and to be available to be counted
Yeah.
for in these things. I just want to ask you a question here, and I just have to ask it because someone put it to me on Instagram saying only one set of people benefiting, and they are JLP supports. I'm not going to answer that for you, but you can answer that straight up. Um,
Well,
only one set of
there's
people
no
benefiting,
denying.
and they're all yes,
So let me just to that person with the response with the concern or the question
yes,
just now. Let me just indicate
yes,
that any Jamaican who is in a substandard condition, described as the worst of the worst, whether they wear an orange shirt, whether they wear a green shirt, or indeed if they wear no shirt at all,
mm,
they are deserving of support from the state of Jamaica, support
yes,
that is made possible by taxpayers like myself. because when my
Yeah.
income tax and my consumption taxes are paid, I am delighted as a Jamaican who is in a better position, who is better able to. I'm delighted to know
Yeah.
that some of my resources are going to provide some kind of support and alleviation, poverty alleviation for some of my Jamaican sisters, brothers and sisters,
Yes.
irrespective of the shirt that they wear. So, yes, you may have JLP supporting persons as beneficiaries, and indeed, you will have PNP supporting persons as beneficiaries, and then persons who are apolitical, who, just by virtue of their dire circumstance, would have essentially self selected in terms of being deserving of this support via this Hope Social Housing Program. So we are unapologetic in that
Yes.
regard. There are folks, we said, who essentially see everything through the prism of negativity and just
Yes.
walk around and can't help being pessimistic.
Yes.
But those of us who are hopeful about Jamaica, mean Jamaica well, and are optimistic, we are delighted whether a PNP man gets a house that moves him from poverty to prosperity, or
Mm.
whether a JLP lady and a single mother who has 3 children is able to move out of substandard housing conditions into more befitting housing conditions. We're
This is very,
unapologetic about
yeah.
that, my friend.
This is very good. And I do have a dream. But before I tell you about my dream, I just want to ask this question. If they, in the next election, and if there's a change of administration, is the system or the provision set in place for this to continue um, under the new administration?
That's an
This,
excellent question.
yes,
That's an excellent question. The Jamaican people and your viewers there in the United Kingdom, for those
yes,
persons who are joining us from the United States' eastern seaboard, or
yes,
indeed elsewhere across North America, I would posit here and now that elections have consequences.
yes,
There in the United States, you saw President elect Trump
yes,
campaigning on a certain platform. The gentleman telegraphed in no uncertain terms to the American people what he's about, tariffs
yes,
being one of the key ones. That's all. And you have seen him sending signals so far. As to whether he will ultimately do it following January 20 is another thing. But he has sent every signal so far that tariffs will be happening and deportation will be happening. So I say all of that to say this. The Hope Social Housing Program is an initiative, a never before seen initiative here in Jamaica, and it has been brought to the Jamaican people courtesy of the Andrew Holness led Jamaica Labour Party government.
yes,
Yes. Prior to that, what we had were a few, little nuggets here and there, but largely food for the poor related type housing, and these were wooden structures. So whenever you're in a community and you see that particular structure, everybody knows that it is a little substandard, social housing outfit. These are people who, in some instances, may not even have had inside bathrooms. Yes? So these are
mm,
wooden structures. These hope units are much more substantial and dignified concrete houses. But I say all of that to say this: there is no guarantee that any measure, whether, especially where they are considered to be good and serving the Jamaican people well, you may not have policy continuity if you have changes in administration. Because the truth of the matter is that, as I said earlier, elections have consequences, and there is no
yes,
second place in politics. You either win, or as they say in the NBA playoffs, you win or go home. Yes? So
right,
the idea behind it is that we are focused on delivering for the people of Jamaica. We are focused on bringing the people who will be making the determination as to
mm,
whom form government after the elections in 2025. We're focused on bringing them into our confidence, increasingly so, because from the very inception of the life of this administration, we have been giving back to the people of Jamaica. We have been serving them well, whether it is in the form of the much touted 1.5 income tax break. Yes,
yes,
8 going 9 now consecutive years of no new taxes. We have reduced stamp duty and transfer tax. We have essentially abolished the minimum business tax. We have increased the threshold in relation to filing GCT for small businesses from $3 million to 10 million Jamaican dollars. When people like yourself and others come into Jamaica Silver and CDL, you would have,
Yeah.
prior to the present moment, you would have had 500 United States dollars of credit, as it were, in terms of the duty free threshold. When Silburn boards the plane at London Gatwick to disembark at Kingston Manly, yes, you
Yeah.
would have now a 100 United States dollar, a thousand United States dollar credit in terms of your duty free threshold.
Yes.
For persons who go online to make purchases of small items, particularly those that they can't readily get here or access here in Jamaica, they have, they're able to purchase items that value up to 100 United States dollars
Yes.
without customs duty. We have instituted a reverse income tax credit. This is unprecedented. For the first
Mm.
time in Jamaica, the people of Jamaica who qualified based on earning less than $3 million
Yes.
per annum were eligible for a $20,000 give back. We have
Yes.
increased the minimum wage, moving it from just about $6,200 when we took office in March 2016 to the current $15,000 that it stands at today.
Yes. Yes.
We would have increased as well the pensions to our old age pensioners.
Mm.
So the income tax threshold and pensions, because our elderly Jamaicans are persons who were often left out of the loop whenever government brings any initiative to
Yes.
market and so on. We would have decreased or lowered the GCT here in Jamaica from 16.5% to 15%. That is putting money back in the pockets of the people of Jamaica.
And
On the
also,
electricity side, we're moving from
yeah.
15% to 7%. And as I said before, we have done much for the elderly, and we have instituted what is called an old age, a social pension for
Yes.
Jamaicans who are over 75 years of age who have no formal pensions to get, and they have not contributed to NIS and would not have otherwise been eligible for an NIS pension. We're providing a social pension for Jamaicans who are over 75 years old. I see
So
you
you create.
seeking to.
So yeah. So you're creating this social network there,
Yes,
which
as a social safety net is
social safety net.
what it's called, because
Yeah.
marginalized Jamaicans, those persons who have often been left out of the loop,
Yeah.
these people would have been subsisting in some instances, unfortunately, subhuman conditions. You're
Yes.
bringing dignity to them, and you mentioned something a while ago that reminds me of the fact that we have had appreciable increases in payments to beneficiaries under
Yes.
the PATH
Yeah.
program.
And also the 20,000 kickback effect from the person's income
Well,
tax.
kickback is a bad word
What,
for official domino.
what should
So
I?
it's a
What's the right
give
word?
back. It's a $20,000 give back, a
Give back.
deserving give
Give
back
back.
to
Give
the
back.
to the to the people of Jamaica. In addition to all of the other things that we have
Yes.
done in relation to our young people, abolishing the SLB guarantor requirement, ensuring that we abolish tuition fees at Heart, our flagship training,
Yes.
education and training entity here in Jamaica. So
Yes.
all of these things, when taken together, we are confident as an administration that our platform of delivering for the people of Jamaica, doing things that are meaningful and have
Yes.
served to improve their lives. We have put money back into people's pockets, left, right, and center.
Yes.
Rural youngsters, people in rural Jamaica. Next year, they will have a rural school
Yes.
bus system. This is something that was called for over many decades. It has never happened. It will be happening now. We have already seen the
Yes.
JUTC dispatching at present a new route from Kingston, downtown Kingston,
Mm.
to Yala Southeast in St. Thomas,
Yeah.
and from downtown Kingston as far as Morant Bay in the
Yes.
east.
I want to say I'm glad that Cyprian Pitkin brought this up because this is the last bit I wanted to ask you. And Cyprian Pitkin is a sort of Mr. Pitkin in Jamaica, you know, the guy in charge of NIDS.
Reverend
Yeah,
Conrad
Reverend
Pitkin.
Conrad. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
that's
man,
his
very
son,
well.
Virgin in the UK. Is there any policy in place? Will policy be put in place to continue? It's like a statutory duty. This goes back to that same question I
To
wanted to ask.
continue,
Yes, because you mentioned that you sort of alluded to the bit of President Trump. Elections can also be devastating in certain continuation of
Yeah,
policy.
yeah, indeed. So
But
the short answer to Cyprian is no. So just to be clear,
yeah,
if you were to have a change in the persons holding the reins of government here in Jamaica, any newly minted administration will have to configure the government as it sees fit and will roll out its suite of programs as it sees fit because it would have been entrusted with a mandate by the people of Jamaica and there's no guarantee. So in short, there's no guarantee that the things that the previous administration would have done that they would be, continuing with those. And sadly, we have
yeah,
had that degree of stop and start in Jamaica's political history because of political gamesmanship and political one-upmanship.
you
There's the
see,
view there.
yeah,
So things that were good. For example, when the JLP government left office in 2011 December, we had a thing called the Jamaica Development Infrastructure Program. It was our flagship road infrastructure program. Yes,
yes,
JDIP. When Dr. Davies became Works Minister under the leadership of Mr. Simpson Miller, they changed that to a thing called MIDP. It was
yeah,
the same concept, but they couldn't bear to continue with something called JDIP because it is the JLP, the previous administration, that had paternity for that program. So instead of persisting with the program, they instituted something called the Major Infrastructure Development Program,
yeah,
MIDP.
yes.
So you
You
do
know,
have those stops and
yeah.
starts.
Cyprian just mentioned something there. Just read for comments. I believe that this is a question that voters should really ask of the respective parties if there can be something in place for good things which are happening. I believe this is a good policy. I believe this is a good thing.
I'll
Should
tell you another
continue.
good thing that is happening.
Yeah.
8 consecutive years of no new taxes. We have
Uh,
a set of people who have taxation in their DNA. And that is the clear and present danger here. I would like to stick with the people who are about no new taxes
uh,
rather than take my chances or to take any risk with the set of people who, when they were last at the wicket, they levied $60 billion in new taxes on the backs of the Jamaican people.
you
There
sound
are,
like what the conservative was saying about Labour Party in the UK. These guys are going to charge you with taxes left, right, and centre. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, the Labour Party in Jamaica is
the
affiliated with the
conservative
Conservative
outfit.
Party in the UK, and the PNP is affiliated with the Labour Party in the
They're
UK
more
through
left of center politics. That's right.
Socialist International.
Yeah.
There's a thing which is called Vision 2030. And I always say that Vision 2030, which should have been a bipartisan agreement within both parties, there shouldn't be even any manifestos when it comes on to elections. Everybody should be singing from the same Sankey,
Mm-hmm.
and
All
actually
right.
going through the same process in a sense because you want Jamaica to be better. And the dream that I have, Marlon, before we go, is that
Mhm.
when you remove the king as the head of state in Jamaica, which
I,
is
I just, I just want to make a comment. If you
yeah,
could
yeah,
just
okay,
kindly hold the
okay,
question, the
yeah,
monarch
go,
in the UK,
yeah,
and let me just touch on this issue you
yeah,
raised a while ago.
yeah, yeah. I'll
I,
just go
the,
on,
the,
yeah,
there are countries,
yeah,
and this approach has served those countries well.
mm,
There are countries who have devised a national development plan under
yes,
Chairman Mao Zedong, following the Chinese Revolution in 1940 something or 1950 something.
yeah,
The Chinese had a blueprint essentially for its development. So that was under Chairman Mao Zedong. Yes? Here in
yeah,
Jamaica, we had Vision 2030, and conceptually and in terms of having a blueprint for our development, that is good. But that does not preclude, and it should not, because you have
yeah,
to appreciate, Silbert, that we don't live
yeah,
in a utopia. We live in a
yeah,
utopia rather. We live in a space where there is the competitiveness, there is the contest of ideas, and we are generally agreed on the destination as a people. And here is where political parties come in. And this is where political parties have relevance. Because though we are agreed on moving from Kingston to Montego Bay, so Montego Bay is the
Mm,
destination,
mm,
you will have a divergence of ideas or a
yeah,
divergence of views as to
yeah,
how you will get to Montego Bay. So one set of people may say, listen, let us use the new north-south highway and connect through Caymanas,
yeah,
end up at Miami Bay, and then move along the north coast to Montego Bay. And another set of people may say, listen, let us get to Montego Bay by traveling along the south coast and connecting ultimately from Ferris in
mm,
Westmoreland up to Cambridge and downtown Montego Bay ultimately.
mm,
Yes? So we are generally, as patriotic people here in Jamaica,
yes,
mindful of what we would like to see as the end product for Jamaica and the destination for Jamaica, which is a more prosperous society, a more harmonious society, a society in which we can go out at 10 o'clock at night and we don't have to be
mm,
looking over our shoulders because the shot of them don't exist. The gunman, the gun running don't exist, and that policeman who unfortunately lost his life at that Texaco gas station last week would not have lost his life because a criminal is pouncing on him in furtherance of a robbery and thus senselessly took the man's life, depriving his family of that breadwinner. So the point I'm making is that it's important for there to be the political contest because different political parties will have different platforms. So, for example, the PNP, as we heard from Damian Crawford, believes that to fund education more effectively, we need to have more taxes, a tax for education that is ring fenced and provides more support to education. I
yes,
have some other views, and the JP has some other views.
yeah,
We believe in growing the pie, focusing on the denominator, growing the
yes,
GDP of Jamaica so that that generates considerably greater government revenues
mm,
for you to be able to do more in education and in other areas of national need, as we're seeing now in terms of garbage trucks being purchased, JUTC buses being purchased, police stations being repaired, roads being filled, being constructed and rehabilitated. $45 billion have been
yes,
set on
yeah,
the spot. The PNP has never found $45 billion in their
yeah.
entire
Ma- ma- yeah.
100-year history to do something like that.
Marlon, my dream and my what I'd love to see though is just something like
I
what
prefer you
Cyprian.
say aspiration. As the
Yeah,
Prime Minister
yeah,
told us, people who are sleeping dream.
dream, yeah. My
Those of us
aspiration,
who are on our
yeah,
feet and
yeah,
working on behalf of the
yeah,
Jamaican
yeah,
people
yeah.
and
Okay,
working to make us a
yeah,
better society,
yeah.
we
Your
aspire. We don't
point is
dream.
point is taken. Aspirations. Why isn't
Yeah.
other NGO involved in the decision on how these houses are allocated? It can be deemed that MPs are giving consequences that are loyal to them. I just saw a vision there whereby if the legacy of Andrew Holness with these houses,
Mm-hmm.
which is crucial, can be assimilated with NGOs and all those sort of things, and structured into a policy whereby it become fixed, whereby because I'm sure I've seen this, and you can tell me I'm wrong. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen PNP persons with the Prime Minister at some of these handovers. Am I right?
Yes, man. Because remember, you have PNP members of parliament, and this is a program that
Exactly.
is based on the
Exactly.
member of parliament
Exactly,
identifies the
exactly,
beneficiary.
exactly.
Yeah.
So my point is this: that, and maybe I need to put it to Mark Golan when I have an interview with one of the persons from the PNP is that something which is successful like this should it not be continued in a structured way, as what Cyprian said, NGOs involved in decision how these houses are allocated in a way whereby it rises the level. Because listen, Marlon, I've got this vision, aspiration that whenever
Mm-hmm.
the King of England is removed from Jamaica, we get rid of the green and the orange.
Well,
We
the,
lose
the,
we lose the green, we lose the orange, and we lose that thing that makes a lot of noise.
Silvern,
Sorry, I'm just
I'll,
going
I'll,
off.
I'll, 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 I'll say this.
Yeah, yeah,
By virtue of how our political culture has been in Jamaica,
yes,
many people, and perhaps you number among them,
yeah,
have little time for the things that represent and concern the partisan politics and the
Yes.
respective political parties.
Yeah.
So when you mention doing away with the green and the orange, really these colors are essentially just the symbols and identifying colors, not dissimilar to how Everton identifies. West Ham dons that kind of burgundy and blue. Yes, we know Liverpool's color. We know Man U, Manchester's red, that kind of thing. They're bantering with Manchester City, which
Yes.
dons the light blue. So the idea is that political parties, in as much as a country has a national flag, for example, political parties will have symbols. Jamaica has national colors, the black, the green, and the gold. So I wouldn't necessarily take, I hear and
Yeah.
I'm just placing on the table that I see it a bit differently because
Yes.
I am mindful of the fact that governments are formed out of political movements, and political movements are essentially a grouping of like-minded people. It
Yes.
not be similar to if myself, Cyprian, and Silburn decide to form an advocacy group or a lobby group or a watchdog group.
Yes.
We are essentially like-minded people coalescing around an idea, coalescing around an aspiration, and making a determination that we're going to campaign for this thing, we're going to advance this agenda because we think it will work well for Jamaica land we love.
Yes. Yes. Well, listen, Sir Marlon Morgan, and I want to thank you so much for joining. And I know we said an hour, but I'm looking at the time. We're past that time,
No,
and
you
I'm
wanted to
grateful for
comment.
that.
I still want to do the UK, the
Yeah,
monarch thing with you.
you want to get rid of the king. You want to get rid of the king. I'm in the king's.
So,
I'm in the
so,
king's
so,
parlor.
so
Go on. Tell me.
yeah, man. So just to be clear, and I'm
Yeah.
mindful of that. You are in the
Yes.
UK, as are
Yes.
many of our Jamaican brothers and sisters, and that's
Yes.
fine. Jamaica's diaspora, as Andrew Holness said years ago, is
Yes.
the Commonwealth of Jamaica. When we use the word Commonwealth, it is oftentimes in the context of the United Kingdom's hegemonic relationship with Jamaica. But
Yes.
Jamaica, when you think of those of us who are on the rock here, we
Yes.
are at the center. But our Jamaican brothers and sisters, like yourself, you are domiciled over in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
You are approaching what, 11 o'clock at night?
11:30. Yes. Yeah.
We are coming up on 6:30. You're coming up on 10:30 there in the United
Yes.
States. Well,
Half
in the
past 11.
United Kingdom,
Yes.
it's a 10:30. So
Yes.
you're coming up on 10:30. But the point I'm making is this: in terms of this notion of the Jamaica's future relations with with the British monarch in the United Kingdom, we have to appreciate that it is the aspiration of a people that we're dealing with here. And the idea is that Jamaica, per 1962, 6th of August, attained its political independence. It was never envisaged, it was never intended for our independence, our political independence, to have just stopped there. It
Yes.
was always seen as Jamaica, meaning Project Jamaica or Enterprise Jamaica, was always seen as being involved in a march towards complete nationhood. By nationhood, I'm speaking about and referring to the emergence of Jamaica as a republic in its true and manifest sense.
Yes.
That being, we have a head of state which is not associated with, or indeed is not a representative of the UK monarch. So, just to be clear, over many decades, we have had talk, we have had different waves of talk in terms of constitutional reform. I think this latest wave of constitutional reform is particularly promising because you have had certain institutional underpinnings to it. What am I referring to, Silburn?
Mm.
The Prime Minister has established what is called a Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. That ministry, not the Justice Ministry, it is not bogged down with other weighty matters of state. It has a primary and principal focus on legal issues and primarily our constitutional reform. Minister Malahoo Fort heads that up, and my
Yes.
good friend and fellow KC old boy, Wayne Robertson, serves as permanent secretary. The
Yes.
idea is that this ministry, in a very focused way, is distilling the interests, the aspirations, and what Jamaicans envisage in terms of ultimate nationhood, from the arrangements regarding the Senate, for example, from our arrangements regarding what the office of president will entail. Are
Yes.
we going to have a ceremonial president? Are we going to have a quasi-executive and ceremonial? All
Are we
those.
gonna have are we gonna have an executive? You got ceremonial, quasi,
You
and executive.
and you have an executive president, as they
Yes.
do in the So the United States utilizes a particular model where they have an executive president. The view that has emerged based on the soundings and the consultations that have ensued in recent months by the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs is that Jamaica is essentially gonna have a hybrid of sorts,
Yes.
because we place a premium on having a head of state that can serve some of what you mentioned earlier. Someone who will be above the
Yes.
political fray and can essentially be the symbol of our apolitical nature as a country, in terms of this person is neither PNP nor JLP. This person, as you have in the case of the monarch in the United Kingdom, it is just that person who is the titular head of the country, and that person is essentially the symbol of our
Mm.
republic without the political underpinnings and dynamics. So we are where we are in terms of the work of what is called the Constitutional Reform Committee. The CRC has ensued. It was a bipartisan coming together of minds. The opposition had a seat at the table, government had a seat at the table, and a number of civil society organizations, the church, you name it, had a seat at the table, and they have since come out with a report. We know that a bill has since been tabled in the parliament. We know some of the political dynamics at play there, because the the president of the PNP would have withdrawn his members from signing the CRC's report. But from the government standpoint, just to be very clear, we are electing, or we have elected, to embark on and undertake constitutional reform in phases, and in a logical way. We have decided to treat with certain key determinations in phase one. Those determinations are the low hanging fruits, in the sense that these are the issues
Yes.
on which both the PNP and the JLP are generally agreed in terms of a direction in which we should go, in as part of getting rid
Ca-
of the king
yeah.
and just completing Jamaica's cycle in terms of nationhood.
Can I just say, and also to pick up on what one of the comments is here, um, whereby CCR report need wider input. It's premature. Minister Malahu Fort did not involve normal Jamaicans in extensive discussions. Six Town Hall is not representative. And if I could just sort of draw your attention to a couple points. One is that we understand that there are political disagreements, disputes between the government and the opposition over related issues, such as the final court of appeal, as is between the apex court being the privy council or the CCJ or whatever like that. Complexity. The process
Mhm.
involved multiple steps, committee reviews, timing. Opposition parties have raised issues about the bill's proximity to national elections, because 2025 is when they want to this need to be sort of finalized, going through the 3 month review period before debates in both houses, then go to a
Mhm.
referendum. Don't you think that in a crucial time like the election period, this can sort of get sort of uh, is it conflated or a bit overshadowed, and the real genuine issue about this fundamental thing might be overshadowed by a general election?
Well, there's no denying that, to the extent that there are certain requirements that are involved in undertaking constitutional reform, that you may have a particular reality at
Yes,
play, and I speak of the constitutionally due general elections in 2025. There's no
yes,
denying that you may have that intervening. Yes? The point being made, though, is
yes,
that in a context of consensus on the issues that are being proposed here in phase one, this is a good litmus test, I posit, this is a good opportunity for us to demonstrate and exhibit as a people the kind of convergence and
Yes.
consensus that would serve us well as a republic going forward if
Yes.
we can move to establish and put in place some constitutional reforms on which the two major political parties are agreed, because these are generally non-contested issues. I note Rosemary's comments about
Yeah.
more extensive town halls. I will be the first to posit, yes, that indeed you could have had more town hall meetings. I believe that the consultations were, extensive. They could have been more extensive.
Yeah.
The Jamaican people had many modalities via which to make, submissions and interface with the people considering the reform and so on. But because I'm clear that I don't think there's any Jamaican who would have wanted to have attended or be a part of any one of those consultation exercises that would have been barred from so doing.
Yeah.
So we know that, there are some among us who would want to or who would prefer to talk until the cows come home. I am not seeking to suggest that we couldn't have had 10 or we couldn't have had 15 such consultation and sensitization sessions. The more the merrier. But we had 6 of them. In the subsequent phases to come, I will certainly be one of those persons who commend to the people who are responsible, the competent authorities at play, more consultation sessions, because especially with phase 2 likely to involve more contentious arrangements in terms of our constitutional arrangements. Yes, it would be more, rigorous a process. It will be something that merits more engagement and more discourse for us to hammer out concerns, interrogate issues, and
Yes.
determine what appropriate provisions, what appropriate constitutional arrangements would serve the Republic of Jamaica well going forward.
Yeah. Well, definitely, we can say, and I'm sure that most Jamaicans will agree on these points that national identity, becoming a republic, would strengthen Jamaicans' national identity and sovereignty. You mentioned and you alluded that in 1962 was independence. Personally
Mhm.
speaking, I call it the process towards ultimate independence. That's what I call it.
Mhm.
It's a starting process. Self determination, having a Jamaican head of state aligned with the country's goals, self governed and independence. When I look at it sometimes, Marlon, I sometimes say, and Professor Rosalie Hamilton always say this to me sometimes, you can have a what should I say, a sort a ceremonial president, and you can have a executive president. The key issues that really deal with this is the constitution reform. That is what underpins it. It is when they talk about term limits, for argument's sake, when they talk about impeachment, when they talk about fixed dates for election, these are the things that need to be adhered to. Because if someone say the prime minister has too much powers, then you'll have an executive president that come in and say, "Well, I will not have any more election until I'm dead." You know what I'm
I
trying
mean,
to say?
that may be a stretch, but as we've seen in the case of the US, the
Yeah,
president elect has already tipped someone who will be the head of the FBI. And you can appreciate that the FBI is a very, very powerful outfit in
it's a
United States terms.
it's a
And
pattern.
I
Yeah,
mean, an executive president is someone in whom considerable powers are reposed. And I don't
yes,
know that Jamaica, which is why I suspect we're going in the direction we're going in, which is a quasi kind of arrangement where we have a hybrid of sorts. And
yes,
I look forward to the bill coming to Parliament and
yes,
for the debate to ensue. I
yes,
shudder to think, however, that the descendant of our enslavers may stand in the way of Jamaica's attainment of the aspiration of the Jamaican people, particularly
yes,
those of us who are the descendants
mm,
of the enslaved. We cannot
yes,
have the descendant of our enslavers standing in the way of our aspirations as descendants of
yeah,
the enslaved. Mark
mm,
Golding's ancestors were not
yes.
our ancestors. Yes? So
Yeah,
let's be very clear on that.
I hear what you say right there.
Benjamin
I hear what you
Nunes,
say right there. And I'm gonna be,
Benjamin Nunes was
yeah,
ostensibly a slave owner.
yeah, yeah,
Mark Golding maybe asked
yeah,
who Benjamin Nunes was.
yeah.
I don't
But
know
but but
my great great grandfather. Many of
yeah,
us here in Jamaica, we don't have the
yeah,
luxury of knowing and tracing our family tree because our family was scattered, our
yes,
people were displaced. We're not even able to trace our lineage. I
yeah,
suspect Mark Golding is able to trace his
yeah.
lineage.
Marlon, you touch on a point there which I don't have the time to touch into, but it sort of resonates with a bit from what Mr. Warmington alluded to, a bit of what Miss Cuthbert Flynn alluded to in regards to Mark Golding, and in regards to his racial identity. Are you sort of implying that a white person, for argument's sake, and all white persons in Jamaica would have a lineage in Germany, um,
Mhm.
Europe, or whatever like that?
Yeah, man.
Are
So
they?
we take no
Are,
issue with white people.
no,
Zane,
yeah, but are they?
well, put the
Yeah, yeah,
question and then I put the
yeah.
response. Go ahead.
Are they prevented in a sense, or not supposed to be seeking political office in Jamaica based on the fact of their skin tone?
It would be asinine, so to suggest, Silburn. In other
Yes,
words, for the benefit of all the viewers,
yes,
it would be foolish to suggest that a person, based on his or her ethnicity or
yes,
based on his or her historical or cultural and ethnic background and origins, is to be precluded. Yes, in the
yes.
grand scheme of things. I
Mm,
know that there are persons who will take issue to some of the observations I made just now. We're not
yes,
using people's skin color to bar them. All I am saying in very clear terms is that when you think of moral authority and the moral underpinnings here, you cannot have a nation that is predominantly black
mm,
and the people of that society have a particular aspiration, which is to have our ties to a white monarch in the United Kingdom across the Atlantic. We wish to sever ties with that monarch. That person is not among us, is
yes,
not one of us here in Jamaica, yet still nominally and in a titular sense, that person is our head of state. The monarch in the United Kingdom at this time is Jamaica's head of state. And what
yes,
people like myself are submitting is that Jamaica, based on any canvas of the Jamaican society, based on any poll of the people of Jamaica, we
yes,
aspire to be a republic in every sense of the
mm,
word and in every respect where the formation of a republic is concerned. And I'm saying, if you think about moral authority here, it
yes,
is unfortunate and offensive for an individual who can be linked directly to the enslavement of our ancestors to
yes,
be a person standing in the way of, by virtue of being the opposition leader here in Jamaica at this time,
yes,
standing in the way of
yeah,
our aspirations as a people. It is very repugnant. It's very offensive. Let somebody else do that.
yeah,
Let a Peter Phillips PNP do that. Let a Portia Simpson Miller PNP stand in the way. Let a PJ Patterson PNP stand in the way. Let a Damian Crawford or a Lisa Hanna PNP stand in the way. It should not be a Mark Golding led PNP that is standing in the way when you consider the facts of the matter here. This gentleman came to Jamaica in circumstances that are different from how we came to Jamaica. This
yeah,
gentleman did not come to Jamaica on ships. His ancestors did not come to Jamaica, yes, against their own free will, as our ancestors
yeah,
did. These are incontrovertible
yeah,
facts, my friend,
yeah.
irrespective of those persons who may concur with them or those who may take umbrage to them.
Yeah. Well. As Rosemary said, my timekeeper is saying, let us debate on morals next time. I want to let you have that last word there, and I want to thank you so much, Mr. Morgan, for coming on tonight and exposing and to exposit or posit on some of these key issues there, and your openness and frankness. I do appreciate that very much at this time for this. And before I go, I just want to ask you the last word you want to say, sir.
Yeah. For those of you who are domiciled in diaspora, For those of you who may not have visited Jamaica in the past 15 years, for example, if you were to visit Jamaica, you would be coming to a Jamaica
I
that
was
you
I
can
was just
hardly
there in April, so
recognize.
I can speak up.
You were here in recent times?
Yeah, I was there in April, so we cool. We cool. We
There
can
you
say I
go.
was there recently.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And you can.
Yeah.
There is a different Jamaica that is now in place and in vogue. Some of the deficits that we have had over many years, yes, some of the challenges that we have been beset by over many years, these things are being addressed in sustainable and meaningful ways. When you spoke about, whenever any conversation arose 15 or 10 years ago about what are your concerns in relation to Jamaica, jobs would be uppermost in the minds of people. We have the greatest number of Jamaicans in jobs at this time. So much so that a recent Blue Dot poll indicated that as a concern amongst people, jobs now rank at number 4. Portia Simpson Miller's PNP came to office in January 2012 as a result of that December general elections, which they contested on a platform of Jeep. It was a jobs initiative, the Jamaica Emergency Employment Program. Jobs was the number one concern in December 2011. We are at 3.6 unemployment in Jamaica. Jamaica is in the finest position it has ever been in relation to people, men and women, who are diligent and hardworking, being able to go out each day and do something that lawfully puts food on their table. The only time prior to that, Silburn and viewers, that we
Yes.
were able to boast full employment in Jamaica was during, you know what, the enslavement of the Jamaican people during slavery. So let us be very clear on that. A different Jamaica has emerged. We're certainly nowhere near where we want to be, just in terms of income levels, for example, or what our salaries are able to do in real terms. But as government generates more revenues, as our economy grows and flourishes, as the Jamaican economy prospers, yes, we will be in a better place. We will be able to facilitate the aspirations of more people and strategically secure higher incomes, because we recognize as government that this will not happen by magic or organically, which is why Jamaica is positioning itself for the careers of the future. The Prime Minister led a delegation to India, for example, where they are seeking to position Jamaica more in coding, robotics, animation, graphics, tech support, and so on, because these are the higher order skills. These are the exciting careers of the future. And Jamaica needs to move now from just being routine handlers of phone calls at call centers to positioning more in what is called the knowledge service industry, where our people are creating and developing software that solves the problems of corporate entities in the metropole, such as London, where you are domiciled, and New York, where others are domiciled. So a new Jamaica is emerging, and it is being underpinned by a vision for development. It is not a wish, it is not a dream. It is on the basis of an aspiration and a vision, because you have to plan and do things strategically. And one of the things we're doing in that regard is the investment in our human resources. We want more of our people to be skilled in ICTs. And that is why Andrew Hollis is building 6 STEM schools, 6 STEM academies as a start. STEM, of course, denotes science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And that's the future there, and at that direction that we're going in.
I want to thank you so much for Marlon for coming on. And ladies and gentlemen, Marlon Morgan is a member of the JLP and also of the Communication Task Force. I also want to big up Abka Fitzedley for organizing for yourself to come on, and also touch base with Rhoda Crawford, who I wake her up to tell her I need somebody ASAP. She says,
Yeah,
Silver,
man.
why you call
Anytime.
so late? She
Thanks
says,
for having me on. I really appreciate the engagement.
yeah, yeah. Thank
All
you
the
so
best to
much.
you and the viewers.
Yeah, man, and thank you for staying beyond the 1 hour that we agreed on. But
Yeah, man, that's fine.
but
Because we
it is.
had
I
to
tell you,
touch on the Monarchy issue.
yeah, Marlon, it is very helpful when persons from the opposition party come on and share your views. I believe that all ideas content. I believe it's very important that we hear from different views, no matter what, not just one side. And that's why I try to broker these discussions as well as much as possible, sir. So thank you so much and much appreciated. And yes, we met some years ago, isn't it?
Yes, 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 yes. Good
Yeah.
to reconnect. All the best, my
Yeah, man.
brother. And
Respect,
all the
respect,
best to
Marlon.
the viewers. Good,
Thank you,
good.
sir. Cheers. Bye bye. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank again for Mr. Morgan for coming on and to share different views. I'm sure, as I can see, a lot of comments which have been aired and also on Instagram. There's been a lot of comments which has been there, comments which I've not been able to share, and I really don't want to sort of detract away from the discussion and for Marlon to really share as much as possible some of the policy decisions of the JLP. But one of the things that I really want to pick up with him or pick up on, and it's an issue I believe in Jamaica, it's about the issue with the racial aspect of persons, and I'm picking up and um, I'm sensing that there's an issue with persons who are white having leadership potential in Jamaica at this time, at this juncture, whereby we are removing the king as a head of state. And I picked that up also in the UK. I picked that up also from Pan Africanists, persons who are saying that Jamaica at this time should not have a white person to lead Jamaica, 95% black people. So whether we like it or not, but it is a saying and it's a thinking which is out there. I don't know how we're going to move away from that, because at the end of the day, um, we are Jamaica out of many one people, but there are certain issues about removing the king as a head of state, and then also we are having certain persons of different colors there. I I I I think it is wrong in a way to bring in the color bit. That was personally speaking, because we're out of many one people. But hey, it's a view and it's a position, and many people are talking about it, so we cannot ignore it as well. And thanks also for the lots of discussion regarding these properties, these houses, which have been given over to people in Jamaica. I've seen this place a welcome to Victoria Palms. I mean, it's a lovely setup in the Prime Minister constituency, and where people can actually have something of substantial. The mindset of people can be elevated based on the properties that they have. I believe that that is very good. When someone having 8 persons living in a dilapidated property, toilets and all those sort of things, not great. And then to have a property, I believe that is actually something which is really good, really, really good. And I would like, just like our persons have said it, and Mr. Pitkin has said it, is that there should be some sort of policies which are in place for such transition, for the legacy of the Prime Minister Andrew Holness can be in place with some NGOs, or so that even if the government there's a new government or there's a PNP government after the next election, that it won't die. The policies won't die, something which is of a beneficial nature of this. But bringing it into the NGO area, it rids the element of political, whereby GLP or PNP. That's why I say I got this dream. Well, Marlon said, don't say I have this dream. Say I got this aspiration to get rid of this green and this orange and all those sort of things and this noise thing that makes a lot of noise. I think it takes it to a next level, but that's just me anyway. And finally, regarding the whole issue regarding the Integrity Commission, make his point very clear, and I think that is really helpful. And I believe that there are some questions need to be looked at from both sides as to the Integrity Commission at this time. Whether we like it or not, it is a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining tonight, Rosemary and Cyprian, and those on TikTok and Facebook as well. Thank you for joining, and and remember, tomorrow night I'll be having Mr. Joe Aldred. Joe Aldred will be coming on, and we'll be talking about flourishing in Babylon. And that is very interesting, isn't it? Flourishing in Babylon. Can you flourish in Babylon? It's going to be 8 p.m. Sunday, December the 15th at 2024. flourishing in Babylon? Can you flourish in the UK? Can you flourish in Germany? Can you flourish? I'm talking as a black person at this time in these countries, in the United States. Can you live? Babylon will come for you, and things like that. So what can I say? The idea is good from the Prime Minister, but the houses are in his constituency. Okay, so peace out. God bless you, and have a good night. And remember, God bless you. Okay, let me say bye-bye. Thank you.